In the vast, silent wilderness of the Colorado mountains, a desperate call echoed. An animal in peril at a place grimly known as Devil's Drop. It was a plea for survival in a land ravaged by an unforgiving drought, where every creature faced a daily brutal battle for existence. Down in a treacherous ravine, a life hung precariously by a thread, an injured bobcat clinging weakly to the unforgiving stone wall. She whimpered a low, frightened sound and waited utterly alone. Perhaps she had plummeted from the jagged rocks plunging into a narrow crevice, or worse, into the frigid dark water below. By sheer unbelievable luck, a seasoned wildlife ranger named Daniel Morrison was surveying the area later that day. He heard the faint, desperate scrape of claws, a sound barely audible above the wind, and followed it, his heart pounding, to the ravine's dangerous edge. What began as a routine rescue would soon transform into something far, far greater. A profound connection that would fill the empty spaces in an old ranger's heart and lead to a surprise that proved saving one life could spark miracles you never saw coming. Before we dive into this incredible tale, please hit that like button and make sure you're subscribed if you haven't already. Don't forget to tap that notification bell so you won't miss any new heartwarming stories. Daniel Morrison, a man whose face bore the lines of decades spent under the unforgiving sun, sat on his worn porch. He watched the setting sun paint the majestic Colorado mountains in hues of shimmering gold and fiery orange. At 62 years old, retirement from the Wildlife Service was agonizingly close mere months away. 40 years of dedicated rangering had etched countless memories into his soul, but lately they all seemed to blur into an indistinct haze. His beloved wife Margaret had passed 3 brutal winters ago, and since then even the expansive wilderness felt achingly empty. He sipped his lukewarm coffee, desperately trying not to contemplate the profound silence that would inevitably fill his days once he finally hung up his uniform for good. What was a ranger, he mused bitterly, without the wild to protect? Suddenly the radio on his belt crackled to life, jolting him from his melancholy. "Daniel, you there? Got reports of an injured animal near Devil's Drop. Might be nothing but your closest." Devil's Drop. Daniel knew the ravine intimately, a jagged slash of granite where Cascade Creek had mercilessly carved its way through solid stone. The drought had been utterly brutal this year, leaving most water sources bone dry. Animals were becoming desperate, taking unthinkable risks they normally wouldn't. "On my way," he responded, a flicker of gratitude for the sudden distraction from his dark thoughts. The October morning was crisp, the air biting. Frost still clung stubbornly to the lingering shadows as Daniel approached the treacherous ravine. He noticed tracks in the soft mud. A bobcat, but something was terribly wrong. One paw dragged its gait uneven, a clear sign of injury. His chest tightened with a familiar ache. In 4 decades, he'd witnessed firsthand the devastating effects of desperation on wildlife. Then he heard a sound so faint he almost missed it. Not quite a mew, not quite a growl, but the heartbreaking cry of something that had utterly given up fighting. Daniel cautiously peered over the edge. 20 feet down, wedged precariously on a narrow ledge above the rushing, icy water, was the bobcat. Even from this distance, he could see her gaunt ribs, her matted fur, the way she pressed herself against the cold rock, as if desperately trying to disappear into it. He knew he should call for backup. Protocol was crystal clear. But looking into those half-closed, defeated eyes, he knew with chilling certainty that she didn't have time. The water snowmelt, barely above freezing, would steal her remaining warmth. She was already shivering violently. Daniel had done plenty of foolish things in his illustrious career, but climbing down a slick, unstable ravine toward a wounded, terrified predator might just top the list. As he descended, testing each precarious foothold, he talked, not to calm the terrified cat, but to steady his own trembling nerves. "Margaret would call me an old fool," he muttered to himself, a wry, sad smile touching his lips. "She'd probably be right, too." The bobcat's eyes snapped open fully as he approached. She hissed a weak, rattling sound that was more a reflex of pain than a genuine threat. Her lips pulled back from her teeth, but there was no energy behind the gesture, no true aggression. When he was close enough to see the gruesome gash on her hind leg still seeping dark blood, she simply closed her eyes again, as if surrendering to her fate. "I know," Daniel said softly, his voice thick with empathy. "You're scared. Me too. He shrugged off his jacket slowly, telegraphing every single movement, trying not to alarm her further. The bobcat's eyes dilated with fear, and excruciating pain tracked him intently. When he finally reached toward her, she growled low, a final guttural warning. Fair enough, Daniel said, pausing, his voice calm and reassuring. But we both know you can't stay here. For a long, tense moment, they regarded each other. Predator and human both breathing hard, both uncertain of the other's intentions. Then something profound shifted in her intelligent amber eyes. Not trust. Wild things didn't trust easily. But perhaps, just perhaps, recognition. Recognition that she had absolutely no choices left. When Daniel gently wrapped his jacket around her, she went rigid, but incredibly she didn't fight. Her sharp claws pricked through the thick fabric as he carefully lifted her, not attacking, but holding on, clinging to the only chance she had. She weighed so little. How long had it been since she'd made a successful hunt? The climb up was agonizingly treacherous. Daniel's arthritis, usually just a morning ache, screamed in his knees and hands with every strained movement. Twice his foot slipped, sending a jolt of pure terror through him, and both times he felt the bobcat tense against him. But she didn't struggle, didn't try to escape. She had made her choice. Whatever happened now was undeniably better than dying alone in that desolate, icy crevice. At the bustling wildlife clinic, Dr. Elizabeth Hawkins, a woman with kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor, took one look at the bobcat and shook her head grimly. Daniel, this cat's hanging on by a thread. Maybe a 30% chance, and that's being incredibly optimistic. She climbed out of that ravine with me. Daniel stated, his voice firm, unwavering. That has to count for something. As the dedicated medical team worked feverishly, Daniel found himself lost in thought, pondering the profound concept of second chances. He thought about the morning Margaret had received her devastating diagnosis, how they'd sat together in another sterile medical room, listening to cold percentages and grim probabilities. How she'd squeezed his hand, her eyes filled with a fierce determination, and said, well, let's see what we can do with the time we have. You don't have to stay, doctor, Hawkins said, noticing him standing quietly in the corner. We'll call if... I'll stay. Daniel interrupted, his resolve unwavering. Over the following days, Daniel established a new comforting routine. His mornings were for patrol, then directly to the clinic. He'd sit patiently outside the bobcat's enclosure, far enough not to stress her, yet close enough that she knew he was there. He didn't try to interact, didn't push for a connection. He just sat, sometimes reading a worn book, sometimes simply watching. The bobcat, now affectionately named Luna by the clinic staff, remained wary. When staff approached with food or medicine, she'd press herself tightly into the corner, eyes wide with fear. But with Daniel, something was undeniably different. She still kept her distance, but she'd stopped hiding when he arrived. Small progress. Yes, but progress nonetheless. 2 weeks into her recovery, Daniel was engrossed in a report when he noticed a subtle movement. Luna had crept closer to the front of her enclosure, not approaching him directly, but no longer huddled fearfully in the back. She was watching him, those intelligent amber eyes fixed intently on him. Morning, he murmured, not looking up from his papers. Direct eye contact he knew could be threatening to wild animals. Luna's ear twitched, then so quietly he almost missed it. Came a sound he'd never heard from her before, a soft, questioning chirp. Daniel's hand stilled on the papers, but he kept his gaze down. Yeah, it's a nice morning, he said conversationally. Supposed to snow later, though. They sat that way for a peaceful hour, the old ranger pretending to read the recovering bobcat, pretending not to watch him. It became their unspoken ritual. As Luna steadily gained strength, the pressing question of her future arose. She was healing remarkably well, but the months of starvation had left their indelible mark. Dr. Hawkins was deeply concerned about her ability to hunt effectively in the wild. There's the sanctuary, she suggested during a staff meeting, her voice laced with a hint of resignation. It's not ideal. Bobcats need vast territory, but it's better than... She didn't finish the sentence, but Daniel knew what she meant: better than death, better than struggling to survive in a world where the brutal drought had irrevocably tipped the balance against predators. The sanctuary sprawled across 500 acres of meticulously protected land, specifically designed for animals that couldn't safely return to the wild. Daniel, with his vast experience, personally helped prepare a section for Luna. He made sure she had ample caves for shelter, elevated platforms for surveying her new territory, and access to live prey to keep her hunting skills razor sharp. The day of her transfer, Luna surprised everyone. As the staff prepared to sedate her for transport, she unprompted calmly walked into the transfer crate on her own. She looked back once, her intelligent gaze finding Daniel among the group of astonished staff, then faced forward as if embracing her destiny. "I'll be damned," Dr. Hawkins murmured, utterly astounded. "It's like she understands." At the sanctuary, Luna adapted faster than anyone had dared to hope. She quickly established her territory, marking boundaries with fierce precision and exploring every single corner of her new home. Daniel visited twice a week, always maintaining a respectful distance, always honoring her wild nature. He'd sit on a weathered bench near her enclosure, watching her regain the fluid grace of a healthy, thriving predator. One snowy, tranquil December afternoon, Daniel was surprised to discover another bobcat in the adjacent enclosure. "That's Marcus," Dr. Hawkins explained, a male who had tragically lost partial sight in one eye after being hit by a car. "We're not introducing them," she added quickly, knowing his concern. "Bobcats are solitary, but sometimes they surprise us." Luna noticed Marcus immediately. Daniel expected hostility, territorial displays. Instead, she seemed curious. Over the following weeks, he watched them interact through the sturdy fence. Cautious, wary, but undeniably interested in each other. When the staff finally allowed them to share territory, Daniel held his breath, his heart pounding in anticipation. The two cats circled each other for what felt like hours, meticulously reading body language, establishing unseen boundaries. Then Marcus did something truly unexpected. He brought her a rabbit he'd caught, laying it carefully at a neutral point between them before retreating. Luna approached the offering slowly. She sniffed it, looked at Marcus, then did something that made Daniel's eyes well up with tears. She began to eat, but positioned herself so Marcus could approach without fear. They fed together, two solitary predators sharing a sacred meal. Winter deepened, and Daniel's visits became moments of quiet, profound reflection. Watching Luna thrive, seeing her form this unexpected, beautiful bond with Marcus, reminded him that life in its infinite wisdom always found ways to continue even after devastating loss. Margaret, he knew, would have loved this story, would have teased him mercilessly about getting sentimental over a cat. In late February, Daniel noticed Luna moving differently, more careful, more deliberate. Her belly had rounded slightly. He didn't dare to hope, but when Dr. Hawkins confirmed the pregnancy, he felt something shift profoundly in his chest. New life against all odds. The final weeks of winter were tense, filled with anticipation. Luna grew more reclusive, spending her time diligently preparing various dens. Marcus, displaying unusually protective behavior for a male bobcat, stayed nearby but always respectful of her space. Daniel found himself checking his phone constantly, his anxiety mounting, waiting for news. It came on a raw, blustery March morning. "She's in labor," Dr. Hawkins called, her voice filled with excitement. "Thought you'd want to know." Daniel drove through swirling snow, his hands tight on the steering wheel, his heart thumping. In the observation building, staff monitored cameras trained on Luna's chosen den. For hours, nothing. Then, carried on the crisp wind, came the thin, fragile cry of new life. One, Dr. Hawkins breathed. Then two. Three. By evening, an astonishing 5 kittens had been born. 5 tiny, miraculous bundles of fur, from a mother who had nearly died in a ravine just months before. In the days that followed, Daniel maintained his distance more than ever. Luna needed space to bond with her precious kittens, to be the fierce, protective mother nature intended. He watched through the cameras as she nursed them, groomed them with meticulous care, and guarded them with primal intensity. But 2 weeks later, something truly extraordinary happened. Daniel was sitting on his usual bench far from Luna's den when he saw movement. Luna emerged, a tiny, squirming kitten held gently in her mouth. His heart raced. Was she moving them? Was something wrong? She placed the kitten carefully in a patch of sunlight about 50 feet from his bench, far enough to be safe yet close enough for him to see. Then she returned for another. One by one, she brought all 5 kittens out, arranging them meticulously in the sun, a proud, protective mother. Daniel hardly dared to breathe. Luna settled near her babies, her luminous eyes finding his across the distance. She didn't approach, didn't invite interaction, but she was sharing this profound moment with him, showing him what his intervention had made possible. They stayed that way for 20 precious minutes, the old ranger on his bench, the mother bobcat with her vibrant kittens, connected by something that transcended species. Then as naturally as she'd brought them out, Luna gently gathered her babies and returned to the den. Daniel sat there long after they'd gone, silent, tears freezing on his weathered cheeks. In saving Luna, he had thought he was just doing his job, but she, in her own wild way, had given him something profound in return. A powerful reminder that life persists, that connections form in the most unexpected ways, and that even in loss and profound loneliness, there could be moments of pure, unadulterated grace. Spring arrived slowly, tentatively, and with it the kittens grew bold and adventurous. Daniel watched them develop distinct personalities, one adventurous, another cautious, each unique. Luna remained the fierce protective mother, but she continued her ritual of bringing them into view during his visits, always at a distance, always wild but acknowledging the undeniable role he'd played in their very existence. On his last day before official retirement, Daniel sat on his bench one final time. The kittens were nearly grown now, hunting with increasing skill. Luna lounged gracefully on a sun-warmed rock, surveying her flourishing territory. Marcus patrolled nearby, a silent, watchful guardian. As Daniel slowly stood to leave, Luna rose too. She looked at him across the vast space that had always separated them, the necessary distance between wild and human. Then she did something he'd never witnessed before. She blinked slowly, deliberately, once, twice. In the silent language of cats, it was an expression of deep contentment, of profound trust. Daniel blinked back, his throat tight with emotion. Then Luna turned and melted effortlessly into the brush, her thriving family following close behind. Driving home, Daniel pondered the intricate, unseen threads that connected lives. A desperate cry from a desolate ravine, a courageous choice to climb down, despite the inherent danger, a wild creature's profound decision to accept help. And from that single pivotal moment of intervention, 5 vibrant new lives were now exploring the vast, wondrous world. He pulled into his familiar driveway where his empty house waited. But it didn't feel quite as empty anymore. Tomorrow he'd return to the sanctuary, not as a ranger, but as a dedicated volunteer. Luna would maintain her distance as she should, but she'd be there, living proof that sometimes saving one life could ripple outward in ways you never expected. The surprise she'd given him wasn't just her beautiful kittens or her miraculous recovery. It was the profound reminder that even in the twilight of his own journey, he could still make a powerful difference, that connections formed in the most unlikely circumstances could truly fill the empty spaces in a grieving heart. As the first stars emerged over the majestic Colorado mountains, Daniel smiled, a genuine, heartfelt smile. Somewhere in the sanctuary, a bobcat mother was diligently teaching her young to hunt, and an old ranger had found a renewed reason to keep showing up, to keep caring, to keep believing in the endless, remarkable resilience of life. Margaret would have loved this story, and in sharing it with him, Luna had given Daniel something infinitely precious. Not just a memory, but a future. A compelling reason to wake up tomorrow, drive to the sanctuary, and sit on that very bench. To be part of something larger than his own grief. Wild things didn't trust easily, but sometimes they remembered. And sometimes that was enough. The story of Daniel and Luna teaches us a profound lesson. Every life has intrinsic value, and an act of kindness, no matter how small, can create a ripple effect that leads to unforeseen miracles. It reminds us that connections can form in the most unexpected places, and that even in times of profound loss, new beginnings are always possible if we remain open to them. Saving one life can truly spark a future brighter than you ever imagined. What are your thoughts on this incredible rescue story? Have you ever witnessed a similar act of kindness or unexpected connection with an animal? Share your comments below. Don't forget to subscribe for more heartwarming tales. Video rating 9/10.